Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Today I want to do the finally fall book tag. So I'm excited to have a bit of a fall-inspired books to talk about today. So I have 10 questions here for this tag, and I'm gonna answer each question with 2 books. One is a book I've read already this year, and the other one is one I'm planning to read. So this way I think I'm gonna get even more excited for the coming weeks. And hopefully I'm gonna get more into the mood of fall and Halloween and all that kind of jazz. Especially because these books I think are all very exciting for me, especially the ones that I haven't read yet, of course. So I hope that you also find something interesting here. There's gonna be a lot of books here, so let's just start with the first question. So I have my cheat sheet here, but the first question is: in fall, the air is crisp and clean. Name a book with a vivid setting. And for this, I have Wilder Girls by Rory because this one is just set on an island, and it is about this school of girls who are kind of trapped here, but there's also kind of a virus happening because all these girls kind of start mutating. And they're kind of closed off from the world and they don't know what's happening. And it has those horroristic vibes, but don't worry, it's not too horroristic. It does have body horror in it, I would say, because the girls are mutating and some of their hairs is starting to shine and others are going scales and you know, it's just different things happening, but it's not like the very, very scary horror, I would say. So if you like creepy books set in a very vivid setting like this island here, where also the animals and the nature is kind of changing, I think you would really enjoy this. This is a young adult book, and I think it's a debut, but I think it's really, really well written. I really love the characters and the setting and the atmosphere in this. So if you're looking for something like this for the fall, I think it's a great one to pick up. And the next one for this question is one I'm planning to read really soon, and it is Riley Sager's newest book, Home Before Dark. Now, this one is on hold at the library and I'm really first in line, so I'm really hoping this to come in the next coming weeks, and I think it's gonna be a perfect fall read because this is like a creepy mystery thriller. I think it's more like a mystery, I would say. Anyway, this one is set in this great haunted house. So basically our main protagonist, a young woman who inherited a house they used to live in when she was a kid with her parents. I think she was like 10-ish years old, something like that. But they only lived there for like a month before they had to leave. And she doesn't really know what happened, but her father wrote a book based on their experiences in that house, and that book became just a great sensation. And everyone afterwards she was kind of known afterwards for the girl who lived in that house because there were some ghosts and just some creepy things. So now her father is dead in the present, and she goes back to the house because she inherited it. She wants to renovate it a little bit so that she can sell it. And then I guess we see what's happening in the present with the house and the renovation, but we also go back in time to see what happened when they first moved in when she was a child. So I think there's like a parallel mysteries are going to happen, and I think it's just going to be great. I have read previously all of Riley Sager's books, and I think this one is the one which is most appealing to me. So I'm excited to read this. And the next question is: nature is beautiful but also dying. Name a book that is beautifully written but also deals with a heavy topic like loss or grief. And for this I have a book I have actually quite recently finished, and it is Kazuo Ishiguro's A Pale View of Hills. Kazuo Ishiguro has rapidly become one of my favorite authors of all time. I think his writing style is absolutely beautiful. He's really good at writing like really characters you connect to emotionally and feel for, and he's really often, his books and his stories make me like cry or at least shed a few tears, you know. And I think this one is great because it captures what grief is. It is about Etsuko, an older woman who is now living alone in England, who is originally from Japan. She has 2 daughters, and very recently she has lost one of the daughters. So now the second daughter comes to visit, and during this time Etsuko looks back at her past when she was living in Japan, and just the situation, what was happening in Japan after the Second World War, and the generational differences between her parents and grandparents and herself, and how differently they thought, how awkward maybe communication was between herself and the older generation. And we see this primarily through her husband and her father-in-law. She also meets a woman who has a child, and in the present we also follow Etsuko and her daughter's relationship. So there's a lot to unpack in this book in regards to differences between generations and what happened in Japan after the Second World War. So it's a great one. I really enjoy Kazuo Ishiguro's writing, and if you want something really beautifully written with heavy topics, then I think you can give this a go. And the next one for this question is one I'm planning to read soon, and it is Jacqueline Woodson's Red at the Bone. Now, again, just like Kazuo Ishiguro, I think Jacqueline Woodson has also become one of my favorite authors. She writes these very short, very lyrical, beautiful books with kind of heavy topics. This one is about an unexpected teen pregnancy and where that leads to. It runs in 2 different timelines, and it tells the story of these 2 families who have to come together because of this unexpected child. It deals with heavy topics like identity, ambition, gentrification, class, status, education. So I think it's gonna be a good one. I can't wait. I think apart from this, I only have Brown Girl Dreaming from Jacqueline Woodson left, and then I would have read everything she wrote. I think so. So I'm excited to get to this one. The next question is, fall is back to school season, share a non-fiction book that taught you something new. And for this, firstly, I'm gonna go with We Are the Weather by Jonatan Safran Foer. Now, this one is about the environmental crisis, and it's not an easy read. It's actually quite a scary one, even though this doesn't really go into details as much, and it depicts like a kind of a bleak future for us, but it's also full of hope. Why I think this is such an interesting and important read is because this approaches the subject from a very different angle as to what I've seen before. The first 60 pages of this is about why we think the way we think about the environmental crisis, and why we haven't done anything actively, or why we deny, or why we just don't do anything actively about it, even though we've known that this is gonna happen since like the 70s or 80s. So he takes examples from his personal life, he takes examples from the Second World War, and he just explains why it's easy for our brain to just think about it, know about it, but just not do anything about it. It's just there's just something between like believing in something but then actually doing something about that as well. And then of course on the second part, or after the 60th page kind of, it goes more depth into what we can do. It gives us some facts, and it just gives us also very simple ways in which we as individuals can do something from today. Because many times we think, well, I'm gonna leave the politicians to do what's right and to make the policies needed to protect our environment, to reduce the CO2 levels and so forth. But sometimes you also want to do something actively because maybe your politicians are not doing what you want to do, or you just want to feel that you are contributing to this as well. And this gives you some really like hands-on examples of what you can do. I really love his approach, because I have some other books which deal with this topic, and those are quite heavy on the facts and quite, I would say, much more bleaker than this one, even though this was kind of a heavy read as well. So this taught me a lot, and let's move on, because it's not a fun one to read, but I think in 2020 it's a must. It's a must, yes. So that is number one for this question. And then number two, I have a really huge nonfiction. Let me pick it up. And this one is A Journey into Eastern Europe's Broken Dreams by John Feffer. Now, this one is quite the chunkster. And I picked this up because this one is about what happened to Eastern Europe after 1989. And I come from Eastern Europe, I come from Romania. And I think that this is gonna give me a more in-depth analysis as to what happened there after the communism fell. So it says, a quarter of a century after the fall of communism, novelist and journalist John Feffer returned to Eastern Europe to track down the hundreds of people he spoke to in the initial atmosphere of optimism as the Iron Curtain fell. Aftershock is a sensational account of that journey. Revealing the broken dreams of a remarkable cast of characters, this is the epic story of a region that, against great odds, is still fighting for a brighter future. Yeah. And then on the back it says, let's imagine the history of Eastern Europe after 1989 as a train leaving a station. So I guess the train is still in motion. So I hope that this is not going to be like one of those heavy theoretical reads, which I'm really not really a fan of, because I really like my non-fiction to be really easy to understand and follow. I mean, English is not my first language, so I don't want to read something really, really heavy and theoretical. So I hope this is gonna be not that, especially because this is also quite long. It's like 500 pages. So I'm excited to get into this. And the question number 4 is, in order to keep warm, it's good to spend some time with the people we love. Name a fictional family, household, friend group that you'd like to be part of. And for this, I have Iain Pearce's Arcadia for once, because I finished this year. It's really, really, really long. And I think this is not one that I'm likely gonna reread, maybe in the future, I'm not sure. But is one that is such an interesting one. It's like a scientific, fantasy, futuristic, sci-fi. I don't know how to call it, because this is a mesh of different genres. And there's like a world within a world in this one. It takes place in a very distant future. It takes place it takes place also in the past, in the 50s. And it also takes place in this imaginary world called Arcadia. And I think that imaginary world is one I would like to visit and spend some time in, because it is like a pastoral. And the life they have there, it just seems so simple, which is so attractive, because 2020. Who doesn't want to leave? Who doesn't want to go down into the basement of an Oxford professor and step into a new world where people live really simply for the land and in communities, where they tell stories, and it just seems the perfect place to be in 2020. So if you haven't heard about this, I suggest you check it out. And if you like fantasy, I'm pretty sure you can get something out of this. And the second one I have for this question, and I think this would be interesting to be, I I think it would be interesting to be a part of this story and this atmosphere. And that is Daphne du Maurier's My Cousin Rachel. I have previously read 2 books by Daphne du Maurier, and I think that she's so good at creating atmosphere. And this is about this great house, I think. I think it's set in a house, but this is basically about this family. And Philip, who lives with an older cousin and who kind of took him in. But then this older cousin, Ambrose, goes to Italy for a trip, and there he kind of gets sick and dies. But while he's in Italy, he gets married. So then the widow comes back, and Philip kind of is apprehensive of meeting her because he feels that maybe she has something to do with his cousin's death. But then Rachel comes into his house and they meet, and who knows what happens. I really love Daphne du Maurier. I have read the Jamaica Inn, and I think also that one is the perfect fall read. But I think this one also will have some creepy mystery vibes. So I can't wait to get to this. Question number 5. The colorful leaves are piling up on the ground. Show us a pile of fall-colored spines. Now, these are all beautiful spines with really nice fall colors. These are the books I'm showing in the thumbnail actually. And none of these books are the ones I mentioned in all the other ones, all the other questions. So I don't know when I'm gonna get to these, but the spines are lovely. So the first one is a post-apocalyptic one, and I read a couple of these this year, and why not continue? Despite 2020 feeling quite post-apocalyptic already. But this one has a really pretty orange spine, but the cover is actually quite wintry, so I think this one is going to be a great transition to winter book. This one is called The Wolves of Winter by Tyrell Johnson. The next one is a Penguin classic, also with the orange spine, and it is The Uninhabitable Earth by David Wallace-Wells. Then I also have Hilary Mantel's Wolf Hall. I picked this up after the 3rd book was on the short list for the Women's Prize for Fiction, and this is the trilogy, and this is the first book about the Tudors. So it's historical fiction, and everyone says it's just amazing. So I can't wait to get to this. Next, I have also a beautiful fall cover. The topic, again, is really hard-hitting, and this is about the Black Lives Matter. It is When They Call You a Terrorist, the Black Lives Matter memoir by Patrisse Khan-Cullors and Asha Bandele. I'm sorry, I can't pronounce those names. Then I have another nonfiction, and this is also a Penguin classic, so it has the beautiful orange spine, and it is Jared Diamond's Upheaval, How Nations Cope with Crisis and Change. Then I have another one which won the Booker Prize, and it also was shortlisted for the Women's Prize this year, and it is Bernadine Evaristo's Girl, Woman, Other. And then the last one I have is, I think, the most beautiful autumn cover I've seen in a long time. And that is Ocean Vuong's On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous. The next question is, fall is the perfect time for some storytelling by the fireside. Share a book wherein someone is telling a story. And for this one, for the first one, for the one I read, is Frankenstein in Baghdad by Ahmed Saadawi. This one is one of those books which has some really powerful messages, and the way it goes about telling you about those important subjects is also quite extraordinary. So in this one we have Frankenstein, who has risen from the death, I guess, and he decides to fight for the people in Baghdad and starts killing the enemies. But then towards the end, he doesn't really know who the enemies are anymore, and he just becomes the bad guy. So I think it's really interesting how Ahmed Saadawi puts this, how fighting is, the way he shows that fighting is kind of useless at the end. And when you get so involved with it, you can't really tell who the bad guys are anymore. And you can't just say that you are on the side of you are on the right side and it's okay to kill the enemies, because we don't know who the enemy is after a while, and it's just pointless. So I think this one is also a great take on the Frankenstein story, but it also a very important message about what happened in Baghdad and the war. And yeah, I think it's a great one. And I think also it was shortlisted for the Booker Prize, I think last year. And my next pick for this question is actually not a book but a series, and it is Robin Hobb's The Realm of the Elderling series, which is like an epic 12-book series. So there are like 4 trilogies in this series. I have read the first trilogy, the Farseer trilogy, in which we are introduced to Fitz, who is a young boy and a royal bastard, who at the beginning of the first book is taken to court to be an apprentice to an assassin, and he's gonna become the king's assassin. And we follow his story in this first trilogy. And I think if you love fantasy, this series is kind of a must. And especially if you really like more character-focused fantasies, more slower paced and more like a classic fantasy, I would say. So why I put this in this is because in this first trilogy we are told Fitz's story. Now I'm excited to move on with this series, and I have the first book in the second trilogy, which is humongous, and it is Ship of Magic. And this is book 1 in the Live Ship Traders series. This one is not about Fitz, but everyone says that maybe this Live Ship Traders series is the best trilogy in this overarching series. The next question is question number 7. The nights are getting darker, share a dark, creepy read. For this one I have The Good People by Hannah Kent. This one is more creepy than dark, I would say, but it's also kind of weird and unsettling because it follows these people in a really remote Irish village at the beginning of the 19th century, where they still live very close to the land. They're farmers, and they really believe in the good people, in the fairies, and are very, very, very superstitious. We follow a widow who is taking care of her grandson, but he's disabled. He doesn't speak, he can't walk, he can't move. And this woman believes that this child is her grandson was taken by the fairies, and the fairies left one of their own in this child's body. So we go on from there. We follow mainly 3 women. We follow the widow, we follow a young servant, and then we follow a medicine woman who will help this woman banish the fairy. That story and what happened to that child and what these women are doing and what they believe, it's unsettling. But it is more unsettling because we kind of see the village and how crazy people get, how they kind of blame each other and they base all their beliefs on these superstitions, and how their worldview is kind of revolved around this, and how ignorant they are. But it's also very unsettling what happens at the end to this child, so be aware of that. And this is also based on a true story. I think Hannah Kent is great at writing characters. She has 2 novels, so both of her novels are taking point of departure in real events, but she's great at creating these remote villages and these people who live very close to the land, I would say. The next one I have for this question is one I'm planning to read. I think it's gonna be perfect for now, Halloween time, and it is The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. So I don't want to tell a lot about this because everyone kind of knows what this is about. So I think this is about as horroristic as it's gonna get for me this year, because I'm really not one for horror. Question number 8. The days are getting colder. Name a short, heartwarming read that could warm up somebody's cold and rainy day. And for this one I didn't even prepare it, I have it right here. It is Miss Winifred Lives for a Day by Winifred Watson. So this is a short Persephone classic in which we follow this elderly woman, spinster, who finds herself in the employment of this actress, singer, I don't remember. And it follows a day of Miss Winifred's life and how meeting this actress gets her in these situations which are completely new to her, and how she maneuvers out of these situations and how she takes on life, which has taken a completely new turn for her. And then I have one more that I'm planning to read. For this, I have Alice Hoffman's Practical Magic. I think this one is the one the movie was based on, with Nicole Kidman and Sandra Bullock. The next question is, fall returns every year. Name an old favorite that you'd like to return to soon. Now, these are not exactly books that I've read before that I want to reread, but they're like series. For the first one, I want to mention a series that I want to return to, and that is Ilona Andrews' The Hidden Legacy series. I think I have read all of the books. No, the last one came out, I think, in August, so I want to read that. And this is like urban fantasy, and it's a romance. These are romance series. So in the first, so we follow 3 sisters, and each trilogy is about one of these sisters. There's an overarching plot, there's a lot of action and twists and turns, of course the romance, so I think what better to read in the fall. And for the next, I have an author I would like to return to because I loved all the previous books from her that I read, and that is N.K. Jemisin's newest novel, which is The City We Became. I think this is the first book in a new trilogy of hers. And I've previously read the Broken Earth trilogy by her and absolutely loved it. I think she creates very unique fantasy, science fiction worlds. Really diverse cast of characters with good representation in them. I have also read her short story collection, How Long Till Black Future Month. I think one of the stories is in the same world as this one. So I'm not exactly sure what this is about. All I know that this is set in New York, and it is a fantasy, I think. I'm pretty sure it is a fantasy, but I don't want to know more because I'm pretty sure I'm gonna love it. Okay, I don't think I have any more questions, or books at least, to talk about. But the last question is, fall is the perfect time for cozy reading nights. Share your favorite cozy reading accessories. Now, I don't have a lot of accessories, I would say, but I have a fluffy sweater I like to wear because it's really nice and soft and warm. And I also wear I like to bundle up in a cozy, warm, under a cozy and warm blanket. So I'm really cocooned in basically when I read. So yeah, that's where I am in the fall, in the evenings, in the weekends, I guess. Maybe with a nice cup of tea. I think for me, I only mostly drink tea in the autumn-winter period. So yeah, that's all I have for you. Let me know what books are you planning to read this fall. I'm not really one to pick out very fall related books or mystery thrillers, but I think just thinking about all these books I mentioned here, I'm really getting into this fall mood, and I hope these books are gonna be great and I'm really gonna have a blast. Yes. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.